Welcome back to the channel, guys. Mad Scientist here. So today we're gonna do a preparation for this woofer. Um, we're going to do a resin on the paper cone. As you can see, there's dark patches where the tinsel wire basically burnt the the cone. So it's made the inside of this very soft, and I'm just scared that because it's a paper cone, if there's going because it's both spots, there's two spots that it's basically softened, and if this plays too hard enough, it'll end up ripping this thing open. I'll show you. And then this tends to happen. So to try and prevent this, even though this one here was resin on the outside, the inside on this side here got weak because of excessive play, and it basically ripped loose. There was weak spots on the cone, the dust cap, from previously opening and closing, so I don't want that to happen to this one as well. So what we're gonna do now is we're going to have to put new tinsel wire in, because this was the old one, and this is the main reason as to why this ended up burning here. And if you can see, that's actually not even a tinsel wire. There's just a whole bunch of wire that's been winded together. And then we've got this one here. This is also just wire that's been winded together, and then that there's actually the tinsel wire. But we are going to use new tinsel wire, and in comparison you can see the difference. This one is a lot thicker than this one here, so it's a better quality tinsel wire. What we're gonna do is we're gonna still be using the old clips here for this to fit onto, to solder onto. There's nothing wrong with them. Sorry. So they can still be used. Just want to see, I might have another one. Alright, so the coil is done, as you can see on the woofer. The coil is complete. So now all we're gonna do is we're going to tap into the existing tinsel wire that's here already, solder onto that, and have the point come out where we're going to be screwing it down into the basket. So let's begin with putting on our soldering iron. And then what we can do is we can measure out the size of the tinsel wire that we're going to be using. I think maybe we should do that once the holes are made. Reason being why we're doing that now instead of first doing the fiberglass resin on here is because once the resin hardens, we don't want to make extra holes through the resin, because then that basically just weakens it. I know it's a small hole, it really won't make that big of a difference, but if we do this now and then we put the resin will basically seal the hole that is created by the tinsel wire, and thus making it a little bit more stronger, and this won't be flopping around and be loose. Now, I have been asked previously as to why do we leave the tinsel wire bare like this and not put in a heat shrink over it. We've put heat shrink over tinsel wires, but what tends to happen is the heat shrink being a plastic, the tinsel wires do get hot. So what tends to happen is the plastic gets soft because it kind of burns, and then it gets harder, and then it causes the problem because the tensile wire gets, tensile wire gets hot and the plastic gets hard. Then it basically restricts this here from proper movement from when the woofer plays up and down. So what happens after a while, not it's not like 1 day or 2 days or so. Over time, what will happen is, because this is getting hot and maybe excessive heat, it'll burn into this and it'll break this. But when it's open like this, you can monitor the tinsel wire from discoloration, so you'll be able to pick up that you're putting maybe excessive power into the woofer, or your amplifier is not set correctly, which is causing clipping, because the wire is going to show discoloration, and that's basically a sure sign to let you know that either you need to turn down the volume or you need to get your amplifier reset. Check your voltage, because 30 low voltage will give you a dirty signal, and dirty signal also causes tinsel wires to discolor and break. So the main thing is we keep them bare so we can monitor if there's any like major changes to the tinsel wire, so that you can basically save. Because once this woofer is placed inside, you have clear access, visual, to be able to monitor the tinsel wires. But when they heat shrink, then you won't be able to tell whether the color on the wire has been changed. Same as with the coils, when the guys do oxidization, spray over the coils to make them black and give you the issue of well, they're competition coils. Most of the black coils that spray are just basically oxidized spray. You won't be able to tell whether the coil is taking actual excessive heat or not, because the coil is already black. What does tend to happen with the black coils though is that you'll see a little bit of bubbling and the coil will start splitting. There'll be a little bit of split gaps. I've done one coil here to basically show what that does, what that looks like. As you can see there's a gap. I've coiled this coil with that, and as you can see my glue. So what I did was I basically over baked this coil to show that when there's excessive heat on a coil, that wire starts to split. And what tends to happen then is, what'll happen with this is, it probably won't split any further than that. The coil will just turn different color and burn. This glue that I use is very high heat, so the chances of the coil actually falling off are very high. Or no, wait, the chances of the coil falling off are very slim. So there's basically like almost no chance of the coil falling off. And if the coil does fall off, the entire coil will fall off in its entirety as you see it here. But that won't happen because there's quite a bit of glue put on the former itself to bind the coil to the former. And because there's the excessive glue put on the bottom, you'll see that some of the glue basically seeps through, and that's because when this thing bakes, the glue basically becomes almost like a liquid form, and then it seeps through all of the copper coatings, and that binds the coil and makes the coil basically a lot stronger. So there's no need for resin on this coil or any other materials to keep the coil together. The glue does all of that. Also with excessive heat, basically with the coil being this color, you'll see the color change on the coil, which you can see through the gaps on the woofer itself. So if you can just look through one of the gaps here, after removing the woofer, you'll be able to tell that there's you have this color on the coil, and that'll tell you that something's going on. You need to turn down one or two of the settings, most of the time, in most cases, your coil failure is because of um, not matching your gains correctly. So your gain gets set maybe up a certain level, and then your LPF gets set up to a certain level, your bass boost, your subsonic, all of those things get set to certain levels, but if they don't correspond with each other, then there's an excessive heat because the tuning is not correct, and that's what causes either the coil to get hot, super hot, where it softens the glue and then the coil falls off. But like I said, I bake my coils so that there's no once the excessive heat happens, the coil doesn't get hot anymore, where the glue softens to a liquid state, and then that's what causes the coil to fall. Because remember, when your coil gets super hot and that glue turns into a liquid state, this woofer is sitting like this, and if you know anything about gravity, gravity will pull this coil down, because the glue becomes a liquid state, there's nothing really that's holding the coil. And with that movement constantly going up and down, what tends to happen is if you're holding it up and you're doing that, the coil ends up falling and then it gets all mangled up inside. But the glue that I use after baking, it doesn't get soft anymore. So the liquid state happens during the baking process, and once it cools down, the glue won't turn into a liquid state anymore. It stays basically solid, and that causes the coil to stay solid. That's why a lot of people will say after recoil the sub is stronger. You can put more power to it. To a certain extent, that is true, but at the same time, when you add more power to it, the glue just allows for the coil to handle more heat. And when the coil handles more heat, generally in a speaker setup, heat is your enemy. And if you can figure out a way to allow the coil to handle the extra heat, then it'll handle the extra power that you put into it. But at the same time, if you're doing it for a long period of time, the coil then starts changing color and ends up burning. Same process, coil breaks, or this changes color and this breaks, depending on what the issue is at the time. If it's not setting the amplifier correctly, your voltage is dropped, those are the factors that generally cause the tinsel wires to break, tinsel wires to burn, and the coil to heat up and burn. Because sometimes you put a very good quality tinsel wire, it allows the heat to go through. This doesn't discolor, but the coil, because the coil is in a enclosed environment within the center pole and the magnet, it creates a lot of heat, because not a lot of woofers have good ventilation on them. And the woofers who do have good ventilation, sometimes when you put them in an enclosure where the space is not sufficient for the ventilation to actually be beneficial towards the coil, all of that hot air basically goes back up into the woofer, and that causes the sub to get hot and the coil to burn. So this might not discolor, and then the coil burns anyways, because this here is generally the first thing that will give discoloration if the box is correctly built correctly. Then when you have voltage drop and incorrect amplifier settings, all of that basically will cause the tinsels to burn instead of the coil burning. And in a lot of cases the tinsels burn, the coil burns as well, because power goes through here, and in the time that this takes to burn, this is burning as well. So the coil will always, not always, but a lot of times when your tinsels are burned, you'll open up the woofer and you'll find the coil is burnt as well. And then you'll think to yourself, but why didn't this stop the extra power from going into the coil and just burn this? Because this is basically the one link that stops, that should stop the coil from malfunctioning, because this should break first before the coil. Because remember, you got a weak spot from your alternator to your battery, from the battery through to your amplifier, from the amplifier to your woofer, to your terminals, and then from the terminals up into your tinsel wire, and from the tinsel wire into your coil. So all of those breakages, sometimes the speed in which that bad current comes through will burn this, and on its way burning this, it'll go through, burn this, and then that last little bit that went through will end up burning this. Alright, I think this guy is hot enough for us to make our hikes. So let us get to work. Try and make it as close to the tinsel wire as possible. That way we don't have issues with, yeah, this one already started tearing. There's sections here on this coil, so it's a good thing we're going to be resining this. I'll show you now what I'm talking about. Alright, that's in there. Let's put that up. Where's that spot here? You can see this line here, and if you can check that, there's a line going here, this line going around here. That's the line that basically is going to cause this to rip loose, and then this is gone, and that's basically on the spot where the dust cap fits. So we're gonna have to put at least 2 sets of resin on here, so 2 coats of resin on there, so that it doesn't cause any major issues. Let's see here, this will go across and then comes out. I would say let's put him inside, and then we can measure where we want our tinsel to come out, because if your tinsels are too long as well on the outside, I'll give you a peek now as to what I'm doing. When your tinsels are too long, what also tends to happen is it'll hit on here. So while you're playing the music, you'll hear there's a funny noise, and you'll think maybe it's misalignment on the coil, and you'll open it up, you'll put new shims in, and you'll keep doing it and keep doing it and keep doing it, and eventually you'll figure out that it's actually the tinsels that's hitting against the cone. It's a very annoying noise, very annoying. Right, let's just solder these guys onto so now we're gonna solder the new tinsels onto the coil. And we're using the old coils, the old connections of the coil. To solder this together. Remove, let's clean out the old excess glue that's on there. Alright. Solder these two guys together. I'll show you guys what it looks like after I'm done here. Help. That's one. Move the old glue that's holding it. It's been sprayed over the stay there. Why not? Why being faulty? That's the first one done here. We're not gonna leave it like that. We've got a black glue that goes over that as well, so that it looks nice and neat again. The old glue off. Put some solder on there. out, and for us to make sure that everything is working under the skin, we will now test on the outside, make sure everything is reading. Yep, that's reading there, and this side as well. Yep, that's reading over there. That's perfect. Alright, so now that we got basically both sides that's reading, what we're gonna do is we take our black glue and we put it over there. What this also does is it basically, when the glue sets over this, it will help the heat, because what tends to happen is with the tinsel wire and the solder, if you don't put glue over it, somehow it gets, when the woofer gets hot and tinsel get hot, the solder will basically get hot, and then if there's no glue that's holding everything together, the tinsel, because of the solder being there and the tinsel being there, tinsel getting hot, the solder will get hot and it will pop loose, because there's some serious heat that goes into these setups. And when the tinsel gets a lot of heat, where the soldering joint is, it'll basically just pop loose, and then the speaker stops playing and you think you burned the coil. Meanwhile, you never burned the coil. The joint where you soldered basically just pop loose, and there you have it. That's basically, I put the black glue on there, like that. So that'll dry as it dries. Oh, I forgot, I've got an activator that basically makes it dry really quick. Right, next up is all of the connections. What I do with my knife. What I do with my knife. Did I not use it here in the kitchen? Oh. No. Okay, I've got a blade. Okay, so what we're doing now is we're cutting off the old heat shrink so we can access the solder that the old wire went into. So there's heat shrink covering the old soldering. Right, as you can see, it's not really all that amazing, but as we say in the terms, it is what it is. It is what it is. Alright, and then that one's open as well. Just open all of them first, and then we can solder everything out and solder everything onto the tinsel wires, and then we're basically done, and we don't have to worry about going on. You know, the thing is, you have to learn to do things quickly, because we know how the power is here. Just now load shedding will come back, and then it's stage 5, and then we don't have power to power the soldering iron. So we try and do as much as we can, as quick as we can, guy, you are hot now. Don't even try it. Right, that's one. I don't even think this one here is connected. This one looks like it's, I don't even know what's going on here. Okay, it's two. You know, I used to worry and want to know who's these guys that's doing all of those things here. There's so much information out there and ways that you can learn how to do this stuff. I'm just done trying to fight a losing battle, you know what I'm saying? So we let everyone do what they want to do, how they want to do it. Not saying that my way is perfect or anything like that, because it's not. There's probably somebody out there that can do what I'm doing a lot better than what I'm doing. I won't even dispute that. Okay, so this is gonna go like such. Okay, so let's just get the angle right. Okay, and then we get some solder. That one is on. Next up, so I'm gonna go like that, I'm gonna go like that. Okay, cool. I think I'm possibly going to need put pieces on there, and take this guy, put him up there, and then we solder him with the old solder. And he's done. Alright, and then we do the other side. Let's just solder this guy here. Take this guy. Good. There. Okay, done. And last but not least, this guy. Okay, right, but I'm noticing that this guy is not catching so lekker, so let's clean the blade. I think it's all of that black. That should make it work a lot better. Alright, so now they're on. They're all on. That side's on. We can put over our guy here. Right. This will now go in, that will go in, that will go in, and that will go in. Right, so that's done on that side. Let's do a clean up of this because we are going to be putting some resin on here and we don't want any dust on the cone. We'll just clean this guy out as best we can. All the dust. Alright, so now it's a little bit clean. So we've got new tinsels, we've got new coil. Let's go put some resin on our guy. Alright, so what we got here is we got some fiberglass resin. I use the Luxor one because it's really good. What you want to do is make sure, where is it now? Make sure you've got your brush ready, you've got your container ready that you're going to do the mixing in, because if you still got to scramble around for these things, once you've put in your hardener, it tends to get dry real quick, and you want it to dry on the speaker instead of it drying in the container. Alright, so let's go ahead and open up. Now if I put a decent enough layer into this, I wouldn't have to put 2 coats. So let's put a decent amount on there one time, then we can avoid putting a double coat on there, because remember, that's just a normal street speaker. I doubt that the amount of power it will be getting is going to be so excessive that it will break it, and I got faith in my work. Alright, so we've got our speaker down. We're going to add in a couple of drops of this. Alright, that should be enough. Now usually you take a piece of stick and you mix it, but that's just now a waste of time. Alright, so let's drop this. You guys can have a look see as to what I'm doing. Alright, so let's go ahead and mix this. Okay, then we can go ahead and just paint this on here. See, like I said guys, once you put that hardener on here, you kind of have to work real quick, because that hardener makes this rock hard real quick. So don't dilly-dally too much on one spot. Make sure you get a decent coating throughout the speaker. You can always just come back, and the targeted areas, make sure you put a healthy amount, especially where the speaker is at its weakest. So just layer it lacquer, put like a thick coating there. Alright, let's move along. Can't stay there too long. Try not to let the resin get onto the surround, because that's going to make it hard, and then it's not going to have flex, and you need the surround to flex. Alright, we're back at the other side now. Pour like a coating there. Remember the spot that was weak, make sure you get into where the spider is, right up until the neck, so the entire cone has good coverage. Alright. Back at the other spot. Okay, this however is going to now stand outside in the wind and the sun. Well, there's no sun today, but he comes out every now and then to say hello. And maybe he can help us get this guy dry. Okay, that's it there. Alright, now like I said, the inside wasn't gonna do that, but I feel like I need to just do it in the areas that was giving a little bit problems, and we still got quite a bit of resin here, so don't see why not. Basically you're getting it from both sides. Harden it from both sides. Yeah, starting to harden now. I'm just scared that this is going to break, because this sub is going into a taxi, and if if anybody knows how the taxi guys play sound in their stuff, they're not very forgiving, you know. So let's make sure Suzuki will survive, even if they are being a little bit on the excessive side. Alright, that's quite a bit that's dry here already, but I can still feel some of the resin is not 100% dry yet, but it should dry up now. Don't forget to check out our channel on TikTok as well. I do a lot of my lives on TikTok. It's Farid Musa on TikTok, but I do have a M.A.D Customs page there as well. I'm actually trying to get the M.A.D Customs page up to 1,000 followers so I can do my lives on the M.A.D Customs page. Alright, that's a decent amount there. Go. Okay, right. So let's put that guy down. Yeah, we probably went a little bit too hard on it. Then take the rest of your guy. That goes in there. Get some thinners. Let that brush sit in the thinners. And there we go. What is done basically on that side, on the inside as well. All done real good. We're gonna leave him outside so that he can dry up lekker, and that's done for that one. Tonight, hopefully that should be dry. I'm fairly certain that should be dry by tonight. I'll be closing it up, assembling everything, push terminals back on and everything. So if you guys want to watch that process, I've also got two Pioneer, which ones are those? It's the old Pioneer 800 DVC, 800 watt DVCs. They're 400 RMS, 12-inch Pioneers. I'll be they've closed up already. I'm doing a test tonight, put some bass through them, make sure that everything is running 100%, and then put the dust caps on and let the customer come collect by the weekend. So I'll be closing up this one here, just the assembly part of it. The testing and that should be done tomorrow afternoon or so, and then yeah, that's it. You guys can follow me on my TikTok channel as well. That's where, like I said, I do all of my lives where you can watch the entire process of stripping the speaker and putting it together. I do some of them on here. You know, sometimes I can't make the live, so then I'll do a little bit of videos on here, but most of the work and followers and everything is on my TikTok channel. So check me out, Farid Musa on TikTok, and M.A.D Customs on TikTok as well. Don't forget to like and subscribe the channel. Really appreciate it. Plate, Mysterious 8.